November 19th meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Township Trustees, and ask that you, well, first entertain a motion to return to open session.
Second. So moved. Second.
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. If you would, please join me in the most important thing we're going to do tonight, and that's the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a public hearing tonight on the topic of new Anderson Township design guidelines. Steve's going to do it. Steve, will you tell us what this is all about?
I will. Good evening. We do have a public hearing this evening for the draft Anderson Township design guidelines. I had some copies, but they may have disappeared from this front table. They have been available on our website, and I'll briefly go through these for you and talk about the process that we've been through. These are guidelines that have been developed by our Economic Development Committee. I want to acknowledge the committee and their efforts to help put these together. This was one of the initiatives that arose out of a number of our prior planning studies, including our comprehensive plan and a number of our corridor plans. These also, like I said, became an initiative of our committee back in late 2011. And while I'm thanking the Economic Development Committee, I also want to thank the community of Salem, New Hampshire. They were a prototype for this. We worked extensively with them. They won an award nationally at one of the planning conferences, and we followed their guidelines and utilized them for here in Anderson Township. The design guidelines are meant to be not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's more of a handbook for our decision makers and for developers coming into the community, and this would apply only to non-residential areas as far as when they develop projects and proposals. A number of objectives. I won't read through all these in the interest of time. Again, this PowerPoint and the guidelines have been on our website for the better part of 6 months. But essentially, the guidelines are meant to increase or improve the quality of development, not only the design of buildings, but the layout of properties, the interaction of properties between one another, particularly in corridors such as Beachmont and others where you have very separate ownership. They're also meant to improve and promote property values in those areas and have been shown to do that in other communities. Again, some of the additional goals, avoid piecemeal and fragmented development and general promotion of public health, safety, and welfare. As far as the applicability, these guidelines would apply only in the areas that, and this map is a little bit tricky to read, but for orientation purposes, this is Beachmont Avenue, the area in red. So those are retail areas or retail commercially zoned areas. It would also apply to the areas up in purple, which is the industrial area of the township, and then for non-residential uses that might be scattered about, such as down in the Bell Tower Park, Coney Island area, as well as up in the riverfront zoned areas along the Little Miami River. They would accompany new development requests or applications that would come before the township's zoning commission or board of zoning appeals or trustees. Again, the concept here is what am I allowed to do, and it provides a guideline for those folks coming into the community, so there's no guessing as far as what our objectives and ideals are. They're oriented in 5 different sections. They've utilized a lot of images to convey that. These are the sections that we have in the guidelines: site planning, architecture, landscape, lighting, and signage. A lot of illustrations and diagrams. This is just a typical layout in the circulation section. Again, these are the areas that are touched upon in the site planning in regards to circulation, vehicular, pedestrian, integration of various buildings on a site. Architecture section, which is what most folks think of when they think of design, but it's just one element, is the appearance of the structures. Again, we are applying this to a broad brush area, so there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's meant to kind of speak in the spirit of the architecture in that area. So what might be appropriate in Clough Pike, down in the historic district, may be completely different than Beachmont Avenue, but there's beginning to see some sort of integration between materials and colors, those types of things in those areas. Landscaping, again, we have fairly, I think, robust landscaping standards right now. These were updated back in 2002, so this would touch upon and provide recommendations in those areas. Same with lighting. When that was updated back in 2002 with our parking code, we touched a lot about lighting, and that has drastically improved as well, but this would speak to some of the use of fixtures and common commonalities between different areas. And then finally, signage. And again, this is one that we continue to update through the years. Much of what exists and people point to on Beachmont and other areas is signage that has been there before we had standards back in 1990, and certainly since those have been updated several times since that point in time. But it outlines various recommendations for signage, how it's utilized, how it reflects the main building, et cetera. Again, the recent review, these were developed earlier this year, and we had a series of public meetings through the months of August and September. We had 9 public meetings across the township. Many of those coincided with our business district meetings, Clough Pike, down Salem Road, elsewhere in the community. Ultimately, the Economic Development Committee came back to the Board of Trustees and who initiated adoption of these in October. There was a public hearing held before our Zoning Commission, as is commonplace for development of plans or guidelines such as these. That happened just before Thanksgiving, and that was a unanimous approval by the Zoning Commission, and the Board will review these tonight. If they are adopted, or if the Board makes that resolution, they will ultimately go before the Hamilton County Planning Commission in January. Again, try to go through that fairly brief. I would be happy to answer any questions that the Board has. And of course, this is a public hearing as well, if there are folks in the audience that wish to speak.
Mr. O'Brien?
Going forward, Steve, what would be the process for making changes, say in individual areas? Say like down the historical district, going forward, people would go, if they want to make a recommendation for the Clough Historical District or on Salem Road, what would be the process for doing that?
Are you speaking to a site improvement, or are you speaking to modifications of this document?
Modification of the document.
Well, we're hoping that that won't be something, since we're adopting it at this point in time. We've gone through a fairly extensive process. But like any plan, there could be a requested amendment. These are fairly general in nature, so they don't speak to a specific geographic area. But if there was something that we found in here that was causing difficulty or problematic for us,
right,
like any other plan amendment process, it would come back through that same channel to amend that. Or ultimately, in a few years, we would update this, as we do with most of our planning documents.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
1 second. Steve, I think that after spending a lot of time on this this process, it's important for people to understand that you don't have to follow these guidelines. We do not have zoning in place that requires it, but I think that most, and you're already watching all the volunteer signs that you've already seen that are consistent with this plan, because people and businesses want to have the aesthetics, the aesthetic effect of what these guidelines do. So very much a positive, without forcing people to do anything if they don't want to do it. And I think that's great. Since this is a public hearing, anyone who wishes to speak either for or against the guidelines, please come forward now and tell us your thoughts.
I have a question.
If you would state your name.
William
address.
Hastings on Clough. If one wants to have a variance on the design, not on the law part of it, what committee or what procedure would there be if it doesn't fit your paradigm of design and even a little tweaking that isn't right?
And this might be a good opportunity to talk about the process currently that we have and the process that would be in the future. Currently, if there's no variation, this is not a zoning document, so it's not a regulation per se. As Mr. Jackson alluded to, it's a guideline. If you are not seeking a variation, or you are not subject to a public review currently, this would not change that process. This would be a guide if you had to go through, if you were seeking a zoning variance for a setback or some other type of process, or the development was too intense for the site. This would be a reference document for whatever board you would go before as part of that process. So it doesn't trigger you to have to go to a process. There's no new element created here or new channel for you, but it would be only if you would go before that board, then it would be something that they'd be able to refer to. And again, part of the effort of this was to let everybody know from the onset what we're looking for, so there are no surprises. And that's one of the difficulties we found, not so much in recent years, but going back, is an application would go through a zoning board, and there'd be some recommendations made that were not foreseen. And so we're trying to eliminate that element and bring everybody to the same page. If there was, you weren't satisfied with the recommendation or the requirement, that appeal process still exists, whether it's through the BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, or through the Zoning Commission, as to the channel to appeal But again, this isn't something that in and of itself would make you go through that process. It would just be a reference if you had to. And without knowing the specifics of it, it's hard to say exactly how it would apply, but in the generality, that's how it would.
Does anyone else wish to address this board on this Township Design Guidelines matter? Let's line up right over here. If not, I'll close the public hearing. And as we typically do, I'd like to move the action on the adoption, move it forward, and introduce a resolution of the Board of Township Trustees adopting the Anderson Township Design Guidelines as presented.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was painless. Well, for those of you who don't know, Peggy Rice retired at the end of November. I have before me a resolution of commendation that I'd like to introduce, but first, some folks would like to make comment. I'm hoping they're all positive. I've personally known Mrs. Rice long before her 24 years as trustee. We were neighbors for many years, lived 4 doors apart, very long time, in Turpin Hills. Mrs. Rice chose to retire. For the record, she never lost an election. In fact, always overwhelmingly was the top vote getter, and for good reason. Having worked with Peggy for the past 18 years, I can attest to the fact that public service can be a true pain in the dupa. For those of you who know what a dupa is, it's good. I take no solace in becoming the oldest and longest-serving trustee. I'm sure that one of our newly elected board members will regularly remind me of that fact, as I did to Mrs. Rice as often as I could. Being trustee is sort of an unrequited love. You know, we get all the negatives and not enough reinforcing positives, at least, I guess, until we retire. Who is that? I can truly relate to and appreciate both Mrs. Rice's sacrifice and her broad community perspective, and I can assure you that she didn't do it for the money or the glory. Maybe for the glory. You know, as trustee, you always have to be available and responsible, and by all means, avoid the pandering to highly vocal, one-trick ponies. Mrs. Rice would probably tell you that the most frustrating aspect of being a trustee is dealing with folks who don't take the time or effort to learn about their government. As an example, we recently heard someone complain that Anderson wasn't transparent enough. Well, that's nonsense. In fact, we're probably the most transparent form of government in the world. If you want a detailed copy of the budget, you just walk up and ask for it or pick up the phone. We have no bureaucracy. We have no layers of staff. We don't have secretaries. We don't even have offices. Our personal phones serve that purpose. We're available 24/8. And Mrs. Rice has been available 24/8 for the past 24 years. And let me tell you, that's quite a feat. Many, many things have changed. Many projects have been completed over the course of her tenure. She and others will likely elaborate on them in just a moment. But from my perspective, Mrs. Rice has been an integral part of the success of our wonderful community, and I personally will sorely miss her. Thank you, Peggy. Who would like to be first? Vicki. Sorry. Volunteer. Vicki will be first.
I will be pleased and proud. First, what I'd like to share with the board and with the audience is a letter that Peggy received from Mark Polisinski, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. Peggy certainly has had an impact on Anderson Township, but she has also had an impact on the region. And I'll share this letter with you. Dear Peggy, thank you for your years of service to OKI and Anderson Township. It is because of leaders like you that both have prospered. It is because of your leadership that we are such good partners with Anderson. I wish you all the best in the future. I will miss your grace and class and prudent contributions to our board. Best wishes, Mark Policinski. I have also had the opportunity over the last couple of days to talk to some of our former trustees, including trustee Mike Walton, who was elected at the same time you were, Peggy, and is also very involved with the green space and getting that legislation through. Mike was going to try to be here this evening. He asked me to share his congratulations on your many, many years of service and to thank you, as did Al Peter, our former trustee, who was also trying to be here. He suggested that I congratulate you on a great career, so I wanted to pass that along. As the board knows, staff did have an opportunity to say goodbye to Peggy back on December the 13th at an employee luncheon. We had opportunity for everyone to comment and share their favorite memories of Peggy and her service to the township, but we have one last gift for you, Peggy, so I'm going to get that for you now.
Mr. O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Peggy, it's been a pleasure to serve with you. Thank you for your time with our township. Thank you for helping me through the 4 years of serving as a trustee on this board. Also want to express to enjoy your retirement. It's well-deserved. Congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Dietz?
Thank you. Hardworking, smart, dedicated. The township would not be in the position that they're in right now if it weren't for you, Peggy. However, Peggy and I did not always have good times. When the endorsement process started in 1989, there were several good candidates that interviewed and gave speeches before the Central Committee. Unfortunately, I was the timekeeper. Maybe fortunately for you, I was the timekeeper. Peggy gave a great speech. She had more to say, and I cut her off. I said, "Your time is up." Furious. Wouldn't talk to me for years. The result was Peggy Rice got the endorsement, and we've teased about it for the last 24 years that it was because of me that she got it. It wasn't. She could have gone on and still got that endorsement. So, but I like to tell her that she was a trustee for 24 years because of me. But I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Peggy Rice, because Peggy was instrumental in involving me in the Green Space Committee back in 1993, and then being appointed the township clerk in 1995. So I don't know who owes whom, but we've been friends. My wife and I and Peggy are friends, and I will say what I said at the luncheon. Joanne and I love you. Good luck.
I believe Representative Steltberg would like to make some comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Rice. It's my honor to be here with you all again. And on behalf of the Ohio House of Representatives, we have a commendation for you, which I will not read because they write these things in a language which few people can actually read and are intelligible. But I just wanted to also congratulate you and thank you for your dedication. I have not known you nearly as long as you have served. I think we met probably in 2005 campaigning. You probably don't remember, but we were at the New England Club. And your passion and dedication to this place was very evident back then, because when you got done passing out cards, you had to run down here or run somewhere to go pick out furniture for here. And your passion for Anderson Township and your dedication, tireless working, is to be commended. And you know, again, I don't go as far back as these guys, but I would agree that this township would not be what it is without your dedication and passion. And I would like to thank you for the courtesy and respect you have shown me and encouragement of legislation even recently, and I know you will continue to follow things. They keep saying retirement. I think it's a stepping into a different role as an advocate for the township. So congratulations and enjoy your 700-plus acres of green space going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? If not, I'm going to bore you with this resolution. I would move that we adopt a resolution of appreciation for Peggy D. Rice. Oh, I have one question. Whose picture is that they keep showing up here? Whose picture is that we keep seeing? Okay.
Yours may have two, Russ, and your hairstyle may have changed also.
Whereas Peggy D. Rice faithfully served the residents of Anderson Township as their elected trustee from January 1, 1990 through November 30th, 2013, and whereas during her tenure, Mrs. Rice kept the interests of those residents at the forefront of her decision-making process, and whereas after learning of residents' desire to preserve Anderson's green environment, she and former Township trustee Mike Walton successfully sought changes in state law which permitted Ohio townships to acquire ownership interests in land, water, or wetlands for the purpose of preservation and protection. And whereas Anderson Township voters took advantage of that authority by overwhelmingly approving a green space levy, which led to Anderson Township becoming Ohio's first green space township, resulting in the preservation of more than 700 acres of property that by law will remain in a natural state. And whereas she actively worked to preserve Anderson's rich history through her participation in Anderson's bicentennial celebration, preservation of the Heritage Center and James Clark Stonehouse, and the History Room at Anderson Center, and whereas she supported the adoption and implementation of approximately 15 plans, including the township's first comprehensive plan, the nationally recognized Beachmont Corridor Plan, and the award-winning Anderson Trails Plan, among others. And whereas her stewardship of taxpayer dollars and that of her fellow trustees helped the township earn and maintain a high credit rating from Moody's Investor Service. And whereas she was instrumental in centering our community through the design and construction of Anderson Center Station, the 5-mile trail, and 5-mile streetscape improvements. And whereas she has been an inspiration, friend, and mentor to many, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Township Trustees of Anderson Township, County of Hamilton, State of Ohio as follows: that this board hereby honors and thanks Peggy D. Rice for her 24 years of dedicated public service to Anderson Township. I need a second.
I will gladly second that motion, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. That's it. I miss you, dear.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. I will say a few words in response to that great tribute and honor which you paid me this evening. Golly, you know, I'm not the person that looks back all that much, although I do love history, but 24 years ago, honestly, if I go back to the beginning, and it's not only a long time, it's nearly a quarter of a century. And no wonder Russ has teased me all these years. But you know, when I go back and try to think 24 years ago and the changes that have happened, it almost doesn't seem real because they have been so very dramatic. And just thinking about it, 24 years ago,
Township zoning was just hot off the ballot press. The referendum had just passed. There was no green space. There was no tax increment financing for funding of projects. No bicentennial legacies. No trails and sidewalk networks. No volunteer resident committees. No community events, and no real sense of a township identity, which has been, from the very beginning, one of my most important goals, is I wanted this township to not only be on the map, but for everyone in it, every resident in it, to know that they were a township resident. So all of this has changed. And those are great changes, and I'm pleased with them. But I want to tell you tonight that it is very important to remember that no one person can accomplish these changes alone. It took an effort of cooperation, partnerships, consensus on township boards, dedicated and hard work by staff and employees. But mostly, it took time. Some projects could only be accomplished by taking baby steps. And township government sometimes does work exceedingly slowly. So it took time, and I had to learn patience and perseverance. So I can say sincerely that I will always be grateful to the residents who gave me enough years in office to achieve these goals. And also say most sincerely, it has been truly a great privilege to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Representative Saltberg had to leave, but we do have a brief report, legislative update.
Yes, thank you. Representative Stalberg and I speak on a weekly basis. Pretty much he keeps me informed of things that are going on at the state level. His most recent report is to let the board know that the House has passed a flurry of bills recently, but the main bills that this board has been interested in, those regarding JEDs and JED zones, and also the annexation legislation, are still in committee at this point. He does wish to publicly express his appreciation to Hamilton County Commissioner Todd Portune and also to Ms. Rice, who traveled to Columbus to testify in support of the annexation bill. And I will keep you posted on any changes in the legislation in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. At every meeting, we set aside time for the public to come forward. If anyone wishes to address this board, now is the time to do it. We only ask that state your name and address and limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. If anyone would like to address the board, please come forward now.
Josh Girth, 8326 Little Harbor, resident of Anderson, and I guess I should have said something earlier, but I wanted to, as a resident of Anderson Township, say thank you to Peggy. When you took office, I was in junior high, and I didn't know and probably didn't care much about Anderson Township government, but over the last 10 years, as I have been involved, I've truly come to appreciate the work that you have done for this wonderful township. As trustee-elect, you, and I want you to know this, are one of the reasons why I decided to run. Your work on matters like the Green Space Program and the recent annexation legislation that you've worked very hard on, as well as all of the examples of collaboration that you've governed by are truly inspirational, and I plan to follow your lead when I take office. So thank you, Peggy. Enjoy your retirement, because yes, you definitely deserve it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Girth. Anyone else? If not, we'll close the public forum and move forward to trustee comments. Mr. O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. It has been with pleasure and pride to have served Anderson and its residents for the last 4 years. I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish as a board, not only with our members here, but also the staff. And it's also, been proud to have been a part of this wonderful community. Peggy, thank you for the last 4 years. I've had a chance to serve with you. I've learned a lot, and I've come to appreciate township government and in your work to bring it to where we are today. Thank you very much. That's it, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. Mr. Dietz?
Thank you.
Crack fiscal officer, right?
As opposed to the crack.
Legal counsel. Law director, yes.
There's a couple things here. As you know, we have the financial reports available, and I will mention on item number D, kind of the results of those. We have no appropriation changes. We do have a resolution that needs to be passed, and it's because the fire and rescue, the pension programs for police and fire are going to have increases over the next couple of years, and they require to have a resolution on file that we know about that and that we will make our payments, which we've always had. So that's one item that we need to get passed.
I would move that we adopt a resolution regarding the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund as detailed before us.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
The other item is the county auditor's office requires us to report our final revenues and our final budget to them, our final appropriations. What we have right now is not final figures because we will have more revenues coming in, we will have more expenses to be paid, we do have encumbrances. But as of right now, we estimated our revenues to be approximately $30.1 million. As of right now, they are $30.8 million, so we're a little bit over on our revenues. We estimated our expenditures to be $34.6 million. We're now at $30.6 million. We do have, like I said, encumbrances and some bills to be paid. My best guess is we will be somewhere around 5% below the budget. We will have those final figures available at our first meeting in January. Unfortunately, we have to report them now, so there is a appropriation resolution in your packet, and we would need approval for those numbers.
I would move that we approve the 2013 final summary appropriation and revenue report for submittal to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office as presented.
Second?
Mr.
Any
O'Brien?
discussion? Excuse me, any discussion?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You sure you don't want to take back this appropriation changes? I want to be sure before we move on.
I was afraid we'd have more.
We have 3 sets of minutes before us to approve. Do we have a motion?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the following minutes: October 17th, 2013, November 7th, 2013, and November 21st, 2013, with minor, if any, changes at all.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. Thank you. Crack Law Director, Margaret Coney.
I have no report this evening. I'd just like to add my congratulations to Peggy and to say I've learned so much from you over the years, beginning way back at Susan Gooden Mayor when you were working there, through these years at the township, so thank you.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning, Paul Drury. No report. Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Matt Guy.
Good evening. Have just a couple of short issues. First one is an application for a liquor license for Mimi's Anderson LLC, doing business as Mama Mimi's Take and Bake Pizza at 8312 Beachmont Avenue. We have no objection to this request for liquor license.
I would move that we not object to a liquor license request for Mimi's Anderson LLC DBA Mama Mimi's Take and Bake Pizza, located at 8312 Beachmont Avenue.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. That's the third one they've had.
Yeah,
Why didn't they do them all at
I think there have
once
been
and
some changes there,
save a
yeah.
lot of trouble?
Second one is another liquor license request for BSJ Incorporated, doing business as Arthur's Cafe at 8221 Beachmont. We also have no objection to this request.
I would move that we not object to a liquor license request for BSJ Incorporated DBA Arthur's Cafe, located at 8221 Beachmont Avenue.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes. For the record, just so people know where that is originally was the Perkins Restaurant. Nice facility, and we really welcome them to, they'll be an asset to the community.
Best of luck to both those entities, both those businesses.
The last item I have is associated with the press release that the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office has put out, reference to the Sheriff's Office is now going to be offering carry and concealed license training through our agency and through our trained firearms instructors. And if I would, go ahead and read the press release from Chief Deputy Mark Schoonover. Chief Deputy Mark Schoonover, Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, reports that the Sheriff's Office will begin offering training classes for Ohio residents to obtain their Ohio concealed carry license. Classes will be held regularly and will begin soon. Classes meet the mandated 12-hour of classroom and live fire training. The cost is $95 per person. Participants can bring their own handgun and ammunition, or we will provide a handgun and ammunition for an additional cost of $40. We currently have 2 classes that are scheduled. Class number 1 is broken up into 3 4-hour blocks, January 7th and 9th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., and January 11th from 8 a.m. till noon. Class number 2 is scheduled for February 8th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and February 9th from 8 a.m. to 12, total of 12 hours. Anyone interested in participating in the class to obtain their Ohio concealed carry license should call Captain Earl Price at area code 513-825-1500 or email Captain Price at ccw.training@sheriff.hamilton-co.org. Our firearms instructors will conduct this training. We have a classroom facility and a firing range on East Miami River Road, 9600 East Miami River Road in Colerain Township.
Okay.
Lieutenant, if I may ask a question, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Just a comment, Ms. Jackson, thank you. I do encourage all able adults to take this training. It's very worthwhile, and obviously proper use of a firearm is extremely important. So, thank you.
I would agree.
These classes are being held in Colerain Township. There are several entities in Anderson Township that offer concealed carry classes.
Yes.
What reason would someone want to go to Colerain Township rather than the one in Anderson?
Well, the benefit could be a matter of convenience if you happen to live over there, or it could be the fact that the classes are being offered by private entities, and this class is going to be offered by our trained on-duty law enforcement professionals. I'm a firearms instructor myself for handgun, shotgun, and submachine gun, so I think that level of current expertise is appealing to some people. Also, the cost is very reasonable.
Thank you.
Lastly, Mrs. Rice, my tenure here has been relatively brief. I've only been assigned since February, but you've always greeted me with kindness. I really appreciate the support you have for the relationship between Anderson Township and the Sheriff's Office. I want to thank you for that support and for your service. That's all.
Thank you. Public Works, Richard Shelley.
Good evening. Peggy, with all due respect to this existing board and the incoming board, the look will never be the same up there. Enjoy your time. You richly deserve it. I have 2 items before the board tonight. First one is the acceptance of the Riverview Estates Coldstream subdivision. As the board is aware, the county engineer oversees the construction, the inspection, we get to participate in the repairs and the final walkthrough inspection. The paperwork is put in place, the bond is set, and the county engineer recommends for acceptance, and it is the board's then duty to take a look at this and make sure it's met all the criteria and then accept so we can enter it into township inventory. That's what you have before you tonight.
I would move that we support the Hamilton County Engineer's acceptance of the following private street, which lies in the Riverview Estates at Coldstream as Township Roadway, Asbury Road.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Richard. So we're up to how many miles of road in the township now?
We've got 120.98, so we're just a few feet away from 121.
Okay.
Which, unless Colerain dedicated one in the last couple of weeks, we're still number one here.
Okay.
Okay?
And that's roughly about two-thirds of the paved roads in the township.
Correct. When you consider we're broken into 3 areas, there's township right-of-way, the roads that connect a lot of the township streets are county right-of-way, and there's also state right-of-way, 32, 52, 125, and the such. So it's kind of confusing, but the reality is we have 3 sets of right-of-ways through our jurisdiction.
Okay, and our responsibility is about two-thirds of it. But
Correct.
the major thoroughfares, the Beachmont Avenues, the Asbury Roads, the 8 miles, the Clough Pikes, that's more or less the county or the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
This one is rather unique. It's the first we've ever had. I don't know how many we have in Hamilton County where we have a road that's actually a county road that becomes, under the same name, a township road. So it is quite unusual. And I know that we've talked for some time now about
Yes.
arrangements being made so that we don't duplicate service, particularly the fact that because it is a county road, Asbury up to that point. I appreciate the fact that you've worked out some arrangements, be for the benefit of people up there, and we won't have to double back, drive all the way down Asbury just to do the end.
It's a rare occasion that we stub on to a county road and then call it a township road, just as you said, but Mr. Severs and I are going to work with the county engineer's office and essentially just swap out the right-of-way so that we maintain then from Asbury Road or at the Y all the way back to the end of the subdivision, which makes more sense now. You don't have 2 entities on the same pavement. So just trying to streamline and work together and coordinate our governmental efforts the best we can just to utilize what we have.
And did we actually remove the snow last week on
We
that
did.
road? We did.
We did. Yeah, we got off to an early start. We're practicing.
You were ahead of the curve.
We're practicing.
There you go. Thank you.
We need practice from time to time.
Thank you.
The next item I have before the board is the 2014 Landscape Maintenance Plan. Contract. This will allow us to enter into a contract to maintain the landscaping throughout the township in all 67 different locations of mowing, beds, plants, related around our buildings, our infrastructures, our gateways, our trail, green space, and the example is more than that, where I said 67 locations, but there's over 30 locations on Beachmont alone, each island, which is one location in the contract. So what you had before you is give us the ability to start off January 1 taking care of these islands in the appropriate way. So for the next few months, they'll just get the beds ready and make sure the paper's cleaned up.
You want to tell us about the bid process?
The bid process is very simple. We go out for standard bid, we advertise, take bids in, receive, and go from there. This year we had 2 bidders that applied. One of them didn't get all the way through the vetting process, so to speak, and so the recommendation this year is from Merkel Lawn Care. Merkel has been with us on one other occasion, maybe 2 other occasions, have found them to be very responsible and very well received throughout the community and with staff. So looking forward to working with them again. We do have an optional second-year renewal in this. If everything works out, the contract's not altered dramatically, we will up for a second year at the end of this particular contract. If that doesn't work out, then you'll see me again at the December 14 meeting.
You might mention that I think it was 2 years ago we actually we actually awarded the bids separately.
We did.
But last year, for the first time, we did them, it worked out that the same bidder was low, both for the mowing and for the landscape.
Yes, we offer mowing alone to try to entice smaller landscape groups to get involved. Then we offer landscape maintenance, which takes care of the beds and the plants. And then we offer a combo bid, which might work out in our favor. Obviously, for a few dollars, we'd rather work with one contractor than two, but we always put that out there as an option so that someone who wants to get their foot in the door, so to speak, with contracts here at the township, they have the ability to do that.
And with this process, to have the second year as an option, I like that. I mean, I think it lends stability to it.
I think it's a carrot, if you will, for the landscapers to perform at a high level, and I also think that there's a learning curve involved in learning all 67 sites and getting mobilized and getting your routine down, and then once you get that, to break that chain is kind of a start-over process, if you will. So it makes financial sense for us to do that, too.
I think from a layman's perspective, the Merkel folks were quite a presence. And the folks last year, I didn't see the professionalism that I saw with Merkel, and so I was glad to have them back.
I appreciate that.
That's great. I would move that the board hereby accept the bid of $229,973 from Merkel Lawn Care, deemed to be the most responsive and responsible bidder for the 2014 landscape maintenance project in accordance with the bid plans and specifications, together with a 10% contingency for a maximum appropriation of $252,970. Further, this board would hereby authorize and direct the township administrator to give timely notice of award to the contractor and, after consultation with the law director, to enter into a contract with Merkel Lawn Care in accordance with their bid for the 2014 landscape maintenance project.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
And for purely selfish reasons, I wish the board a very wet and very green Christmas. And everyone else, too. And it's purely selfish reasons, I assure you.
By the way, you need, on behalf of this board and our citizens, to commend your folks, and I tried to speak to a number of them at the luncheon the other day. That last one was quite an effort. I know that even most of them went home at 4 a.m., but I know there were a couple that were out there even longer, so that...
I appreciate that. I will pass that along.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fire and Rescue, Chief Mark Ober. Thank you. All right. And Township Administrator, Mrs. Vicki Earhart, Steve Severs, and Ms. Suzanne Parker.
Yes, as the board has already acted on the design guidelines, we have one item to present. Ms. Parker will be presenting that.
At the board's instruction, I've been taking a look at the possibility of setting up an electricity aggregation program for township residents, and I believe you each have a spreadsheet that shows the quotes that have come in from the 6 suppliers who were interested in working with us on this. As you know, there are a lot of moving parts to this, if you will, with different contract lengths, different sources of energy, different eligibility requirements. But after refining it down and talking to each supplier, I understood that it was the goal of the board to find the best deal, the best pricing and contract deal that we could for the widest number of residents. And in that spirit, I'm prepared to recommend that the board contract with Duke Energy for their package of the electricity aggregation program that township residents could then sign up of their own accord. There will be no automatic enrollment. This is entirely up to each resident to decide if they'd like to participate. Duke will do a great deal of educational interactions with the public, with telephone helplines, a link from our website, and mailings with all kinds of information that explain how their program works. But overall, I think this is probably the best deal for our township residents, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions about that if the board should have any.
Yeah, I have some questions, Ms. Parker. Looking at the spreadsheet here, and we've had it just a relatively short time. Looking at, I would think a 12-month or a 24-month program seems to make sense. But looking at the AEP 12-month program, their rate is significantly less than the comparable others, including Duke. And also without a termination fee. I guess my question is why you're recommending what are you recommending as far as a term for this?
Well, we don't have to choose a term. In fact, we only have to choose a supplier.
Right.
And their package, their proposal, and for both AEP and Duke, as well as the other suppliers, actually, what you see on the spreadsheet is their package that residents can choose from.
Right.
And that includes the different contract lengths with the corresponding prices. So residents would have a choice of whether to sign up for a 12-month contract, a 5-month, a 24-month. It's that package that is part of the proposal from each supplier.
But if someone wanted to just try this out for a 12-month period, AEP is significantly less than the Duke 12-month period. I guess this is all kind of new to people, and to try something for 12 months versus 24 months or longer, it seems to maybe try it for a year and see how it fits.
And certainly people are welcome to do that. I can tell you that from speaking with all of these suppliers
Right.
and with the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio office in Columbus, they all validated that electricity prices are going to go up at the end of 2014. As we get into the fall, we're going to see prices go up. So that actually is what swayed me towards the Duke recommendation, because for the 24-month contract, they do offer a better deal, and that could add stability and predictability to residents for their planning purposes on their electricity costs, because it would lock in their cost for that 24-month period. But if they wanted to do the 12-month, they certainly have that option too, or for that matter, Duke also offers the 17-month.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Jackson.
2 1,000ths of a cent. Is that the
Yes.
the difference?
Yes, we're getting down to several decimal points here.
So, interesting. I have no problem with following your recommendation. I think the one thing that Duke offers is stability. They are the people that are actually going to supply the electricity under the contract and the requirements under the state of Ohio that actually allows for this sort of thing. So I have no problem for a year going with your recommendation and seeing how it goes. People don't have to sign up if they don't want to. That's the great part about the opt-in program.
That's correct, yes.
We're not forcing anyone to do anything.
That's right.
All
It's
we've done
completely
is
your choice.
negotiated this, and as you know, my big hang-up was the fact that this termination fee could wipe out all the savings when you're dealing with 2 1,000ths of a cent. So once you waive the termination fee, I think I have no problem with it. It looks like all else is pretty equal anyway.
It is, and I would like to add that we had some concerns raised about the source of the energy, whether it was from renewable sources or not. Both of these suppliers offered options for residents to sign up for renewable sources. Duke did provide precise pricing so that if an individual wanted to, say, sign up for in-state solar-generated electricity, they could do so at an extra extra cost, and we have it broken down, and so individuals would know exactly how much that's going to cost them if they want to go that route, but they don't have to.
What do we need to do to move forward here?
I have another question.
Sure.
Mr. Jackson. The mechanics on this, people get their monthly bill now. Will they be getting a separate bill?
No, no matter who the supplier is in the state of Ohio, you continue to get your bill through your local delivery supplier. It gets a little complicated, but so in this case, no matter who the board would choose, people would still get their bill through Duke. It would just have a separate box on the billing statement that would name the supplier and what that individual rate is, but it would still all go through Duke because Duke is still the delivery mechanism. They own the wires and the poles and all the delivery equipment.
Okay. And if you had a question about this, I mean, there'll be separate numbers?
There'll be all kinds of ways that residents can get their questions to Duke. We will have a link off of our website. We will have material that will be mailed to every household that will have a phone number, a direct website, and certainly if people have questions, they can call here and we'll direct them to the appropriate Duke division that can answer that.
Okay. Looking at the spreadsheet again here, just kind of narrowing it down on Duke and AEP. At a 12-month, Duke is more expensive than AEP by a small amount, as Mr. Jackson indicated, and neither one of them have a termination fee. I do like the idea that Duke is, if someone wants to go with an in-state or a non-solar rate, they know what their pricing would be there. Also green, E-certified, and then the adjacent state non-solar. There's also a rate there, so those are two very known. If someone wants to sign up for those, I think that's important. Again, I'm in many things, I'm inclined, especially in a commodity like this, I'm always inclined to go with the lowest cost. But I can see, I'm going to consider your recommendation.
Thank you.
Suzanne. Thank
yes,
you.
and it does give residents a lot of options. As you said, if they want to go with the renewable sources,
Right.
They have all kinds of options there that just weren't a part of the other proposals like they were with Duke.
And Duke did, with the other options, Duke did give you specific pricing, whereas AEP did not.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be an individually negotiated.
Okay.
You might mention, Suzanne, I don't think you mentioned that Duke originally had a early termination fee in their one-year contract, and we showed them the error of their ways, right?
We very nicely asked them if they would reconsider that, and they did.
My question is, what do we do next?
I simply need a motion, which I think a sample motion is attached to the memo in your packet, that would authorize the township administrator to enter into an agreement with Duke Energy Retail. And of course, this is all subject to review by the law director. And if you will pass that motion, then we can take it from there.
I have it in my warm little hands. I would move that we authorize the township administrator to enter into an agreement with Duke Retail, I believe.
Energy Retail.
Right. Subject to review by the law director, to offer Anderson Township residents and businesses a preferred pricing package for their electricity generation costs.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
If I may add, now that you have decided on your supplier, I didn't bring this up because I didn't want to enter new information that wasn't provided by the other suppliers, but my contact with Duke has assured me that even once the enrollment period is over for this initial offering, they're going to come back to us with other packages and other deals that will be available to residents. So it will be an ongoing kind of an arrangement for the length of our understanding with Duke. So I'd like to just add that even if a resident misses that first enrollment period, there will be other opportunities to get some preferred pricing. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just say thank you to staff and Suzanne on behalf of the effort that's gone into this thing. When we first started, everyone tried to tell us that we needed to contract with somebody who was going to make a whole lot of money by being our agent to do what Suzanne has ultimately done. So thank you very much, and I'm glad we didn't listen to him.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure the citizens of our community thank you.
Yes. Well, we have nothing further for the board. On behalf of staff, I wish you all Merry Christmas, and wish our residents happy holidays and safe travels. Hopefully, there's not too much water. But we do wish everyone a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we have a motion to adjourn, I would tell everyone that our next televised board meeting is January 23rd at 6 p.m. You need to call 688-8400 to confirm. I would also tell you that immediately following this meeting, there's going to be a lot of swearing, and that's a good thing, as our two new trustees will be sworn in early. And with that, I would wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy 2014, and thank you very much for coming. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.